I am a monument to all of your sins. Yeah, that explains the tentacles, but not much else.
Oh, this is the flood hive mind I was talking about.
Well, what do you want? You have committed great sins. You hold your own mind hostage, stringing it along by a lead of impulses and arrogance, and you are strangling your own heart, battering it with baseless doubts and quandaries. We know.
We just worked through it.
That wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, well, spending 3 whole parts of a video series bickering and taking turns being upset didn't stick.
Clearly. Well, good for you.
Weird-ass plant.
Thank you. Oh, he's gone.
Gravemind is a gauntlet of every type of Covenant enemy and more, and the numbers crank up so much that going target to target feels a lot less feasible. It doesn't help that we got teleported in the middle of a civil war. Oh yeah, definitely not. But it means there's a buffet of every Covenant weapon under the sun, and no shortage of baddies to use them on. There's always a new situation on Gravemind. It's also incredibly claustrophobic. If we were the Arbiter, we could probably just skip most of these fights. But we're Chief, so we have no choice. It's about having the right tool for the job. Precision weapons for grunts, bullet hoses for jackals, heavy weapons for brutes and elites, and wow, you meant claustrophobic. Whatever we have on hands for hunters, and all we have to do is be mindful of our own health and safety.
I threw a grenade.
And that bastard we decided to stake ourselves with. And you'd hope, with this being one of the final climactic levels, that the Covenant would be a bit more mindful about something like that too. You'd also think they'd be a bit more careful about leaving fully loaded, fresh off the shelf weapons all over the place, but I guess you gotta keep this sort of thing handy in case someone like us shows up. But it'd be nice of them to dole out the bigger toys a bit less sparingly. It's kinda hard to deal with hunters with nothing but explosives and an energy sword. Which means that armor of theirs really does its job. They stay low and slow, they're small enough to jump over, and the best way to hit them is with flanking and really high precision. And while we have our arsenal, knowledge, and quick wits, they have stage hazards. But the second we get our hands on something more precise, it's a piece of cake. Different tool for a different problem. Not every issue needs a hammer, after all. Even if I'm struggling to think of a situation where an energy sword and a carbine don't get the job done. Except for one where a beam rifle gets it done just a little bit better. Fuck, that's nice. And these wide open areas are littered with them. Because we're absolutely not supposed to take these things inside. Yeah, that's what the energy sword's for. And what if the energy sword runs out? Doesn't look like that's very likely. And if it does, we still got a beam rifle, which I think is even better. Is it great in CQC? No, not really, but it works, and... Hey, shit-ass, you're gonna get us killed! Am not. Do you not see these corners in those boxes? We're one bad shot away from... He's got those. If we're gonna be skulking around at this range, we should get our hands on a needler, and use the cover we have to our benefit instead of blindly flailing a fuel rod around. Alright, but I'm not using a needler if I can help it. And I'm especially not using a needler in a room like this. I'd rather not use a plasma rifle if I can help it when dealing with health bars as thick as the brutes, especially when there are multiple. But grenades work wonders. Now in this case, a fuel rod's fantastic. You know what? Yeah, I agree. And at the same end, hunters are really deadly out here, and every time one of us bites it, the other has to scramble back to the other side of the arena under fuel rod fire. And speaking of fuel rod, go for it, this is about as good as it gets. Nails, meat hammer. After letting us sample so much, it's up to the climax to make us put a plate together. Some stronger enemies leave their backs open, so... And others... leave their backs open, so... And when the hordes start pooling in... which only leaves an elite and his energy sword. Fuel rod's out. I mean, I guess you gotta be sparing with what you try to hammer. Or just use a bigger one. Why keep hammering when we have a whole toolbox to work with? The fun stuff and the stuff that works. All of it and more at our fingertips, but we can't just keep hammering shit because we like the way it feels. You know, it's nice when luck pans out for us. Sure, we got hot dropped into a war zone, but we also got dropped next to a rock with a gun waiting for us. The Covenant's goal is to activate the ring right now, meaning despite the feud, this isn't really a war zone as much as it is a step towards genocide.
I'll show you how to do a fucking genocide.
And getting our feet in the door is rough. It only gives us a plasma rifle and an energy sword, which is nice, mind you, but not when the sword doesn't kill in a single hit and half the brutes have grenade launchers. The problem is in just how many of them there are. The problem is that we weren't using active camo, and even if the energy sword doesn't quite cut in one, enemies still go down in one hit to a melee in the back. But we need to get the jump on them, because a raging brute can stuff us into a casket just as easily. And once we get our hands on a brute shot of our own, those nails that were sticking out of the ground don't look nearly as threatening. Especially not with company. I know we've had our sour spats with the elites, especially as the Arbiter, but I'm hoping our buddy comes around.
Yeah, not talking shit now, are you?
They have shed our brother's blood, and for that they must die.
Okay, yeah, we're cool now.
Based.
And company always makes combat a bit more interesting, especially after a one-man army slugfest Gravemind always turns out to be. Instead of fighting through an ongoing fight, we're directly pushing into the other side, having to overcome high ground with semi-capable backup and having to check ourselves so that extra backup doesn't wind getting us killed too. But when we're left to our own devices, we cook, like always. The encounters in Uprising are some of the most diverse there are, and a lot of that is owed to the open room plans and verticality. A room like this with nothing but sheer drops asks us if we rather shoot our way down from a height advantage or jump in headlong with energy swords. It also asks us how closely we're paying attention to who's on our side and who isn't.
That is a scary peek.
No! Hey, I'd rather them catch strays than us. And at least in vehicles, we have the speed and firepower to avoid those kinds of things. And even if we get flipped over, we're well equipped for one-on-one fights. Unless a brute hits us with a Tekken combo, sheesh. Sincerely no idea how that happened, or how we're gonna get through that blockade with nothing but a Spectre. We're not. We're falling back and we're counter-sniping. I genuinely don't remember anything about this level, and I'm not sure if it's just because it's sandwiched between my favorite level in the game and my personal boogeyman, but it's kind of a shame. Uprising is a really competent level. I wish I had some excitement built up for this. I might have opted to take it a bit more carefully, but for most of this level, I was just kind of waiting for High Charity and the Great Journey. I think I actually like Uprising more than Great Journey. It makes its case with a diverse set of combats, from tight corridors to vehicle sections, without really changing a whole lot up. Covenant weapons on Covenant enemies, a nice combination, and the higher health of the brutes really incentivizes the use of tactics and power weapons. This is all really controlled, and as a bridge, as reprieve, and as a build-up to the climax, this is nice. Just playing the game and all. We should take more care when we strap up. There's no universe where we don't take High Charity slow. The Flood and brutes are around every corner, and with visibility this low, there's not much of an option for any approach that isn't careful and cautious of every little thing.
What are they doing?
Just kind of swarming.
Okay.
On top of the difficulties, High Charity is eerie. This is the last level where you get to play as Chief, and you'd expect something a bit more explosive. There's always a lull before the main event, and though the action is lulled, with the music taking mostly a back seat to the sound effects and all, the tension is higher than it has ever felt. This game came out in 2004, we're playing on old graphics. How is this deterring us? Because emotions are a product of more than what our eyes can see. The things you can see are the most obvious, but don't always get so stuck in the brain. That reliance on seeing also prods us into a bottleneck with our shitty little flashlight, that we shouldn't pay mind to the way our other senses are stimulated and let them be stimulated even more by a lack of focus. But, harrowing it may be, there aren't too many enemies, and certainly nothing an energy sword can't slice through. And harrowing it may be, we're still going through this with a dumbass at our heel to lighten the mood.
Because every time you start elevator, it starts going down.
Those fears are kept to our own chests, and there's nothing that we can really stand to do to lessen them beyond standing together. Everything's easier in good company, especially pushing along at a crucial moment like this, even as our resources may be waning. But I guess it's not good to just assume things are going to be rough, especially not right at the end of the journey. At the end of the day, fun as it may be, this is still a process. More hurdles, higher hurdles, but hurdles we're familiar with and are fully capable of overcoming. It's about persistence and conviction, and not getting too wound up in either web. This is fun, but we have more fun when we do our best. And this is important to us, but we should never devote ourselves completely to just the importance. Every once in a while we should take a step back and see what we're doing objectively. Is Halo 2 a good game? Fuck yeah, this is great. This is one of the best first-person shooters ever made. And did we gain anything by coming back to it after all this time? Yeah, I got to look at something I love through a new light, so now I appreciate it even more. Right? The missions I loved weren't all that great. Some of the missions I wasn't in favor of wound up being bangers, and Metropolis is still the best in the game. My thoughts dwelled on what was, and my feelings are different. All I did was reevaluate, and after all that reevaluation, I know what I like about this thing I like even more. So now it's on to something else, right? Greener pastures, bigger hurdles, a proper grind, and so many new things to come. But we're rested. Rested? I feel great. There's nothing wrong with taking one step back, especially if it means you can take 2 steps forward. We should take a break to have some fun more often.